Hello again, everyone. Welcome to the final video in my series on setting up the Super Mario RPG Randomizer. For this final one, we're going to cover injecting our randomized US ROM into the US Virtual Console WAD to install on your Wii. This is the best way to play it, like I explained before. It's the closest way to get to an actual SNES other than playing on an actual SNES, which isn't possible yet. So this is a different process than injecting the Japanese WAD. If you watch the previous video on injecting the Japanese ROM, in that video we used an auto injector tool to inject the Japanese ROM into the Japanese WAD file, and that's a simpler process here. We have to do a more complicated manual process here because basically Nintendo started using compression on their virtual console games after a certain point. And so the Japanese release of Super Mario RPG was right before this happened. So that virtual console release does not use any compression on the ROM, but the US one does, as do all the other SA1 chip games on the virtual console. This process will actually also work for the Japanese ROM as well, but the auto injector tool makes it more convenient because of the lack of compression. So if you're doing the Japanese one, just go use that method instead. So let's get started. So just like the Japanese one, the first step is to actually download the WAD file for the North American Super Mario RPG Virtual Console release. And I can't tell you where to get that. You gotta find it online. Once you have that, you can put it in a folder where you're going to store all your WADs. I keep my WADs in like a separate folder. Here I just have a WADs folder. There's all my WADs. So I have SMRPGJ, SMRPGU. I just named them my little simple file names. These are my Japanese US WAD files. So the next thing you need to do is to get the yet another WAD manager homebrew app for your Wii. This is what you're going to use to install the WAD file once we have injected our randomized ROM, and to install it as an actual like virtual console channel on your Wii and play it. This is exactly the same as the Japanese injection method in that video. If you watch that, it's exactly the same process if you already did it. If you didn't watch that, I'll go over it just quickly here. There's a link in the description and on the wiki page here to download YOM. So we go to this page and we want to download yom.zip. That's the one. So you download that, save it anywhere you want. I've already got downloaded, so I'm not going to bother saving it. So if you extract that to a folder here, like I've extracted YOM here to its own folder, so you'll find inside the zip file, you'll find this apps folder, which is just like in the root of your SD card, and then inside that is the WAD Manager folder, which is the actual program here with its files there. So just like if you installed RetroArch and the D2X CIOS installer when we did that, we want to copy the apps folder to the root of our SD card and merge it with the apps folder there. Or you can go in here and you can copy the WAD Manager folder and then just go to your SD card, go to apps, and paste it in here. I've already got it in here because obviously we used it for the Japanese video. So once you've done that, you're good to get that set up there. So the next thing that we need we need multiple tools to do this. You need to download a special compression tool to properly compress the randomized ROM. This is a bit of an obscure tool. It's called GBA LZSS. So the type of compression that is used in the Virtual Console WAD files is LZ77, which is an old compression format there. And this, even though there are other tools that are ostensibly able to do this same compression, they don't seem to work for some reason. I guess they do the compression slightly differently and it doesn't come out correct. I don't know exactly why, but this tool, which was written a long time ago, way before the Wii, for GBA ROM hacking, is the only thing I found that actually does the compression properly for this WAD injection. So I put a link to it in the description, and on the wiki page here, I packaged it up myself. So you will click on that to download it. It's a MediaFire link, so you'll download that zip file there. GBA lzss.zip, extract it to any directory on your PC. If I go back into my utility list here. Excuse me. So here's the folder where I put it, GBA lzss. So this is GBA lzss.exe. It's just a little, it doesn't even stay open. It's just a little command line utility. It's so simple and old. We're going to use that later in a little bit. Okay, the last thing you need, last tool we need, is the Show Me WADs editor. So this is a program that will actually allow us to unpack and repack our WAD file once we've put the ROM into where it's going to go. So there's a link to it here in the wiki page and in the video description as well. So the latest version as of right now is 1.4, and since this was updated in 2010, it doesn't look like there's going to be any more versions. It's basically done. We don't want WeCS tools. Ignore that. Just get Show Me WADs 1.4. X64 is for 64-bit systems. These days, pretty much everybody has a 64-bit operating system. If you're running a modern version of Windows, or anything else for that matter, it's probably 64-bit. So if for some reason you have a 32-bit system, you can get the regular one. Otherwise, get the X64 one. So it's a rare archive. Download that, extract it to any directory on your PC. I've extracted it right here. Show Me WADs 1.4 X64. So extracted to this folder here. So okay, so now we're gonna run showmewads.exe, and the first time you run this program, you're going to get a pop-up here saying, warning, editing WAD files can result in bad things happening, and you need to click I accept and take the risk of editing WAD features, and click OK. So we know what we're doing. None of the WADs that we're using are particularly dangerous. If you're getting into more crazy homebrew stuff, then you might run the risk of messing up your Wii, but this is just a virtual console game. So the worst thing that happens is it crashes, and we have to hard reset the system. It's fine. So, excuse me. Okay, so now that we're in this screen here, it's just an empty screen, nothing yet. So again, when the first time you run this thing, in order to do anything to WAD files, you need to have this file called a common key file, and that is used for unpacking and repacking the WAD file. It's sort of like it's sort of a cryptography signature thing, sort of a, not quite encryption, but something similar to that. So in order to do this, I don't know why the program doesn't automatically do this the first time you run it. It should, but you just go to Tools, Create Common Key, and then you'll get this prompt that says, please type a couple specific characters to create common key.bin. In my case, it's 45E. I don't know if that's different on other systems. I haven't tried it. I haven't bothered. So just type in exactly what it wants, hit OK, and then you'll see in this folder now, we now have common key.bin. This was just created. So again, I don't know why it doesn't automatically do that. It's kind of annoying, but so now we're good to go. Now we don't have to worry about that anymore. So in this editor, first thing, we're going to go to File, Open Folder, and then you're going to browse to the folder where you have your WADs stored. So I've got my WADs folder here. And so now here's all the WADs in my folder. I've got SMRPGJ, SMRPGU, there's the ones there. So now you can see it shows a bunch of information about these WAD files. It shows like the region, Japan or USA. It shows the type it is, the channel title, the title ID, which is important. And you can see like for the SMRPG ones here, the Japanese one has Japanese Super Mario RPG title. The US one is just called Super Mario RPG, and the region is different. So what we need to do here is we're going to first we're going to extract. I'm actually going to clear everything because I want to start from fresh, for example, here. So I've made a folder here called Unpacked WADs. This is just going to be the folder where I store my unpacked WADs, so that we can mess with them and then repack them, just to keep it separate from everything else, just to keep things nice and clean. It doesn't really matter where you keep them. So we're going to unpack the Super Mario RPG US WAD. So we're going to right-click on this, go down to Extract to Folder, and then we're going to I've got my Wii utils, unpacked WADs. We're going to put it in here. So there we go. Now it's extracted. So now in Unpacked WADs, so now we have a folder with the same name as the WAD file, SMRPGU. And if you look inside this folder, we've got all the files that were in the WAD. We've got some certificate signing stuff here, and we've got all these numbered app files, 0.app, 1.app, all this stuff. That's the actual stuff that has the content of the WAD. It has like the pictures for what the channel is going to be on your main menu, the actual ROM file itself, the manual when you pause a virtual console game and you go look at the manual. So the one that we're interested in is the 5.app file here. This is the largest file by size here, and this is the one for all Super Nintendo Virtual Console games. The ROM is in the 5.app file. So what we need to do is we need to unpack this 5.app file now. So it's like, packing within packing kind of thing. So in order to unpack this, we go in Show Me WADs, we go to Tools, Unpack U8 Archive right here. And then we're going to go to Unpack WADs. Let's move to you. We're going to pick this file, 5.app, open it up, and then it's going to ask you where do you want to unpack this to, and it's going to create a folder for each file that you're unpacking. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back to Unpacked WADs. I'm actually going to select the SMRPGU folder where everything's been unpacked. So it's going to unpack this file inside the folder where we've unpacked the WAD already. And I'm going to do it here. It doesn't really matter where you do it, but I'm doing it here just to keep everything in a single folder so it's nice and organized. And we can use it when we're putting everything back together and repacking the WAD, and it won't interfere. That folder being there won't interfere with the packing process when we're creating the new WAD once we've replaced the ROM. So we're just going to pick the SMRPGU folder. Okay, successfully unpacked U8 archive. So now you see in this folder, we now have 5005 app out as a new folder. And in here, now we've got a bunch of files. So these are the actual raw files packed that were packed inside that file. And you can see we've got one that is a ROM file, a .rom file. That's the actual Super Nintendo ROM. And you can see it's called jcbe.rom. If you remember, JCBE was the title ID of the game for the Wii. The Japanese one is JCBJ. So in the Japanese WAD, if you unpack the Japanese WAD file like this, you would see jcbj.rom. You would also see that the Japanese one would be not this size. It would be 4096 kilobytes. It would be exactly 4 megabytes because, like I said earlier, in the Japanese Virtual Console release, it's not compressed. And that's why that auto-injector tool is able to do that whole process automatically for us. So you see here, it's not just called jcbe.rom, it's called lz77jcbe.rom, signifying that it's actually been compressed by the LZ77 compression. It's also apparently been applied to this manual file here as well, it looks like. So the compressed ROM is smaller. It's 3038 kilobytes, so just around 3 megs in size. And this is why, if you tried to use the auto-injector tool that we used in the last video for the Japanese WAD, if you try to use that with the North American WAD, it will complain that the ROM file is too big, because it's bigger than the one that it's trying to replace in here, because it doesn't know how to deal with the compression stuff. So, now you might be wondering, well, if the Japanese WAD doesn't use compression and the US one does, why don't we just take the randomized US ROM and inject it into the Japanese WAD file? That should work, right? Well, theoretically it should, but it doesn't. So apparently when Super Mario RPG was first released on the Virtual Console in Japan, people in North America wanted to play the English one, so they tried using these WAD injection techniques to inject the English ROM into the Japanese Virtual Console WAD. And that appears to work, and it installs fine, and it shows up on your Wii menu, and it starts fine, and it looks like it's loading okay, and it plays the intro sequence, it does the Square Nintendo logo, goes to the intro sequence with Peach and the picking flowers and the butterflies, and then when it gets to the title screen, it crashes. It just black screen freeze. And nobody knows why. No one was able to figure out why that was. Theoretically, it should have worked fine, but there's something in it that is preventing the US ROM from working with the Japanese Virtual Console WAD. So we can't do that. Fortunately, we figured out this process instead to use the US WAD. So, right, back to the task at hand. So now that we've unpacked this, we need to replace this compressed ROM file with our randomized ROM, but we also need to have it be compressed in the same way. So this is where the GBA-LZSS tool comes into play. We're going to compress the randomized ROM and replace the Virtual Console one. So, what we need to do is we need to go back to, I'm going to go back to the randomizer folder here. So here's our SMRPGJ, SMRPGU, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.smc, so our randomized ROMs here. I'm going to take the US randomized ROM, I'm going to copy this. We need to copy this into the folder where we extracted GBALZSS in here, right? We want this to be in here so that we can work with it more easily. So like I said, this is a command line program, so it's very, ancient and was written like 2004, I think, for GBA hacking. So in order to make this easier, I've created this file compress.bat that I've included in the zip file since I put this up myself, since I had to Google a bit to find this thing. And I made this batch file, Windows batch file, which you can edit with a Notepad or any editor that you want. I use Notepad++, whatever, just to make it a little bit easier. So the command line that you want to run looks like this. It's gbalzss.exe. E is the argument to compress. I'm not sure why it's E instead of C or something like that. Like D, it uses D for decompress and E for recompress, I guess. I don't know. And then the next argument is the input file name, and then the next argument is the output file name. So you can go into it if you want to just open up a command prompt. You know how to work a command prompt on Windows and everything. You can go into that folder and you can just run it manually yourself. Or if command prompts are scary, which they are for some people, I totally get that. You can edit this compress.bat file with like Notepad or anything, and fill out what the command line is supposed to look like here, and then when you can just like run this batch file from Windows Explorer and it will just pop open a command prompt and do it for you. So I've got this filled out here. So my ROM is smrpgu.1234569.smc. So that's my input file name here because it's in the same folder. I'm going to call it the same output file name, but I'm going to put _compressed on the end before the extension. It doesn't matter. Just, name it something. That just seemed to make sense. Right. So then once that's edited, you close that, and then you just open. You open this in Windows Explorer, or just double click on it. It's a batch file, so Windows will execute the commands in the file. So if we do that, it does its thing, and bada bing, we have the compressed ROM now. So you notice that it's 3,199 kilobytes, so it's a little bit bigger than the vanilla ROM that is compressed in the US WAD file right now. That's okay, because we're doing this manual process. The fact that it's a little bit bigger is okay. Because when we repack the WAD and everything, since we're doing it manually, it's going to fit just fine. It'll be updated correctly. So now we have our compressed ROM file. So we're going to take this, and I'll cut it because we don't need to keep it in here. There's no need for that. We go back in, and we're going to put it in, where's our unpacked WADs, RPGU, the 005 app out. Just paste it in here. We're going to move it back in here. So we need to replace this .rom file here. So I'm just going to copy the file name. I'm going to delete the file here just for convenience, and then rename this randomized the compressed ROM we just compressed, the randomized ROM. Rename it, and we're going to ignore Windows warning about changing the file name extension. Yes, we want to change it. We know what we're doing. So now here's our new LZ77JCBE.ROM. This is our compressed randomized ROM here. That's slightly bigger. So now we've replaced it, and also just to note for this point going forward, for generating future seeds, once you get to this point after you've done this once, you can keep this unpacked folder around here, and you can reuse it for future randomized seeds, because all you have to do is compress your new randomized ROM and copy it in here and rename it this. So replace this file with your new randomized compressed ROM, and then go through the same repacking process, which I'm about to go through right now. So once you've got everything here set up, generating new seeds after the first time should be much easier. So now we need to repack everything. So we need to do 2 steps to repack, just going in reverse order. We need to repack everything in this folder here back into a new 05.app file. And then we need to pack everything in here back into a new WAD file. So we go back into Show Me WADs, go to Tools, Pack U8 Archive, and select Without Header. The headers are for other things, I believe. like the one that's 00, that's the base for everything, and this one that's a banner. I think that has to do with the image that it shows on the channel as a channel when you install it on your Wii main menu. So we're going to do without header because that's the first one I tried and it worked. So pack U8 archive without header. We're going to go to the folder where we have our unpacked WADs, RPGU. We're going to select the 05 app out folder. We're going to click OK. Now it's going to ask us where do we want to save this file. So we're going to save it in the unpacked SMRPGU folder here. I'll save it with everything else. Now it wants to name it a default 05 appout.bin. We're going to keep this default name because what I've noticed from trying this before is that if you try to overwrite the existing 05.app file right in this dialog here, it doesn't seem to work. It doesn't actually replace it or do anything in my experience. So my thinking is that it has some kind of check in place that if the file already exists, it won't actually do it. So we're just going to save it and then manually rename it. So just keep the default name and save it in this folder where everything's unpacked. Then it's going to ask you, shall the resultant U8 file be LZ77 compressed? We're going to click no for this because we don't want the app file itself to be compressed. That's not what we want. It's already got everything packed inside of it, and the ROM file and the manual file there are compressed, but they're compressed on their own separately. So we don't want to compress the actual app file itself. So we're going to click no. We get successfully packed U8 archive. All right, we're good. So now in here, so here's our file we just made. Notice that it is slightly bigger, 5200 to 5362. That makes sense because the randomized ROM was slightly larger. So now what we can do is we can delete this existing 05.app file, and then we can rename this one to 05.app. Yes, we want to change it. Thank you, Windows. So now we're ready to go. So now we've got our packed up app file here with the randomized compressed ROM in it. So now we're ready to pack all this stuff into a new WAD that we can install on our Wii. So to do that, we go Tools, Pack WAD. And then we navigate down to the folder where the unpacked WADs are. Packed WADs. We select SMRPGU. Don't pick the app out one that we've got in there. Just pick SMRPGU. That's where all the .app files are, so that's what we need to pack into a WAD. Like I said, the fact that this folder is in here is okay. It's not going to interfere with the process. It will ignore it because it's only looking for these .app files and stuff. So we select this folder, and then it's going to ask, okay, where do you want to save this new WAD file? So I'm going to put it in the same folder as the existing vanilla WAD that I have, and I'll show you why I'm thinking to do that in a minute. It doesn't actually matter. Like, you can put it anywhere because at this point we're basically ready to go. We're going to copy it to our SD card and then install it on our Wii. But I'll show you why I want to put it in here. So I'm going to name it SMRPGU _ 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it has the seed number in it just so I can tell it apart from other randomized ROMs. That's just my suggestion for how to name it, but you can name it whatever you want. So if I save this in the WADs folder now, it packs everything. And then if we hit F5 to refresh, or go File, Refresh, with F5, so now you can see SMRPGU 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.wad. This now appears in the list here because it's in this folder along with all the other things. So the Show Me WADs is looking at it now. So you can see that you can look at the file size here is slightly larger. The number of blocks that it takes up is slightly larger, which makes sense because the compressed randomized ROM was slightly larger. Everything else is the same as the vanilla one. So the reason I suggested to put it in here is because we could copy this over and install it right now, but optionally you can do one more thing before we do that, and I recommend that you do this just for convenience sake to keep everything straight. This channel title is still the same as the vanilla US WAD file. It still just says Super Mario RPG. So when you install this WAD file on your Wii, that's what it will say when you hover over it. So if you've got multiple randomized seeds that you've got installed on your Wii there, it could be hard to keep track of them if you can't see what the seed number is or some way to identify it, right? If you've got multiple installed at the same time. So we can change this channel title before we go ahead inside Show Me WADs as well. So if we right click on this file and go down to change channel title, we can change the channel title. It'll actually change it for all the languages, and if link names stays checked here, which it does by default, we can start typing. It'll keep everything in sync. So There's a length limit on this. I can't remember exactly how many characters it is, but it's not very long. So in order to fit the seed number into this, which is what I want to do just to identify it, I'm going to call it SMRPGU, just so we know it's a US version. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Seed number, and that's about, how much more can we fit on there? Yeah, so there's the limit there on the length there. So it's not very long. So you can't really, once you put the seed number in, you're not going to have very much room. So we're just going to call it SMRPGU, seed number, so now we can identify it. And click OK. And boom. So now you can see on our randomized WAD here, we have the new channel titles been updated there. Even though it's got same title ID and everything, same region still. So everything else is the same. So now we're ready to go. So now we go back to where we've got the WADs folder that Show Me WADs was looking at. So here's our new randomized WAD file. Right? Now, interestingly, the packed WAD file actually ended up slightly smaller than the original one. I'm not sure why that is. Probably a quirk of the compression and how everything works. It just happened to work out smaller. Don't worry, it doesn't have the vanilla one or anything in it. So we're going to take this WAD file. We can actually cut this WAD file because we don't really need to keep it around on the computer. You can copy it if you want. So now go to the root of your SD folder. So now installing the WAD file on your Wii, now that we've got the packed randomized WAD file, this is the exact same as the previous video for the Japanese WAD. So if you've watched that already, you know what to do, so you don't need to watch this. But so if you haven't watched it, in the root of your SD card here, we want to create a directory called WAD if you don't already have one. It needs to be called WAD, W-A-D, not WADs, plural, WAD singular, exactly like this, because the WAD Manager program, the YOM, yet another WAD Manager, is going to look for this folder to see where to look for the WAD files to install. So once we created this folder, we go into this folder and we paste our randomized WAD file. Boom, there it is. And now we're ready to go. So what we can do now is now we can eject the eject mass storage device. We can eject our SD card. Okay. So now I'll switch over to the Wii. Let's switch over to the Wii. There we go. Okay. So now we can take our SD card and put it in the Wii. Okay, there it is. And now we go over to the Homebrew channel. And we load up the Homebrew channel. Yeah, alright. Now we've got yet another WAD manager here. In addition to RetroArch and the CIOS installer that we used earlier. So we're going to select that one. We're going to load it. And so now we get in here. So now to install the WAD, we select iOS version to use. So we want to use iOS 249. You might remember that from when we did the custom iOS install. We installed the hacked iOSs in slot 249 and 250. So you can scroll left and right, and there's a bunch of different options you can pick. So we want 249, which should be the default. So make sure you select iOS 249 to use to install the WAD. Hit A. Select NAND emulator device. We want to leave this on disable. We don't need the NAND emulation for the virtual console stuff. That's for, more homebrew things. So just hit A. Select source device. Again, there's a bunch of ones here. If you've got a USB like hard drive or something, we want Wii SD slot, which should be the default. So pick Wii SD slot since we're using an SD card. Okay. And here's why you need that file just called WAD in your root there. It's looking at SD/WAD. And you can see the file listed here. If we go down, here's smrpgu 123456789.wad. So here's our randomized WAD to install. So we hit A, select action, install, and if you scroll left and right, it's install or uninstall. So we haven't installed it yet, so obviously we can't uninstall it. So let's install the WAD, hit A, and we are installing the WAD. So now it will do its thing. It will take probably about 10 to 20 seconds maybe just to install everything. It doesn't take that long. And then once it's done installing the WAD, then we're pretty much good to go. There we go, installation finished. So press any button to continue, go back here, press B to go back, B, 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 and then press the home button to restart. So press the home button on the Wii remote, and it says restarting Wii. So now it'll exit out of WAD Manager, back to the Homebrew channel, so we can hit home and go exit to system menu. So now we'll go back, the Wii will boot back to the system menu. And hey, look at this. we've got Super Mario RPG, SMRPGU 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, that title that we edited. That's why we put the custom title in so we could tell which one it is. If you had, you know, multiple ones installed, we've only got one here. If we click on that, it's Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars. It's the English release, the North American release. And if you notice, when it cycles through the pictures there, it's got the Super Nintendo logo. The Japanese one has the Super Famicom logo, and it has a bunch of Japanese text on the screen. Actually, I think the Japanese text might actually not appear correctly because it doesn't have the fonts because this is a North American system, but whatever. Point being, let's hit start. Let's hit start. We should say that you will need the GameCube controller or Classic controller. Yep, we will need that. Well, I have my my SNES controller plugged in, so here we go. Hey, looky, looky. And here we have it. It's Super Mario RPG. Beauty. I'll just hit A to go here. So here, English. It's the English title screen. It's not crashing on the title screen. If we hit A and go to the file select screen, hey, look! It's Bowser again! Just like when we tried the US randomized ROM on the RetroArch. If you watch that video with the RetroArch emulator, we have Bowser on the file select screen. And if we hit A, go to new game here, we've got the seed number at the top of the name entry screen here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Because that shows up in the US version, like I said before. If you watch the video on the Japanese version, it doesn't show up there because there's Japanese text in the way and it doesn't have the numerical characters, I think. Yeah. So now I've got my Super Nintendo controller plugged in with a SNES to GameCube controller adapter, and we're ready to enjoy the closest thing to playing on an actual SNES that you can get. Let's put York. Yeah. Let's start the game and see what happens. So the advantage of this over RetroArch, you can see it's got this sort of pixelated SNES look to it here. You can also see that it does not have the slowdown going on with those butterflies flying away from Peach. There was no lag there. Because this is a more stable emulator. It doesn't have the frame drops that RetroArch has. And you can see here, Mario's actually synced up with the music hit there. I pointed that out in the Japanese one as well. Because the Virtual Console emulation is more stable than RetroArch. It has less overhead, and it has a stable frame rate. It doesn't drop any frames there, and it doesn't have the lag problem. So this is one of the reasons that it's nice to play on the Virtual Console WAD injection instead of the emulator. It's just as close as you can get to playing on an actual SNES. It looks like the SNES, it feels like the SNES, and on Wii VC, it's only got about like 1 frame of input delay, maybe. You know, with a SNES controller here on this, you know, jumping and everything, it feels really good. So now if I run into these guys here, you should see, oh, the genie guy's back. Haha, look at that. So Baba Yaga's back. So I think Mario did, what, 84 damage if I time this right? 63. I didn't time it right. Alright, let's try that again. There we go, 84. So Mario's doing 84 damage again. If you remember when we tested this before, he's got a ridiculous 42 attack power in this particular seed, which is pretty crazy. Oh, and there's Juju again. Oh, that was early, I think. Oh yeah, that was really early, but it's okay because my attack is so high that I can just destroy all the enemies in this prologue. So that's pretty funny. Yeah, I think I might actually just play through the rest of this seed for a little while, just for fun to see what happens for a bit after now that I've completed this tutorial, since Mario's starting attack power is ludicrous, to be frank, compared to other seeds that we've seen. And compared to what it normally is, it's normally 20 in the base game, and now it's 42, so it's over twice. I didn't even think that the range on the way that the randomizer does the stats could even take it to that degree. See, everything seems to be working. It's all in English now, and we can attack the chain. And the chain dies in 1 hit. Oh, dearie me. Still pretty funny coming from the speedrun where there's no way the chain dies in 1 hit. Yeah, so yeah, that's about it. That's how we do WAD injection with the US ROM. That's pretty awesome. I think that's pretty cool. So yeah, I'm going to finish up playing the rest of the prologue here, just so I can, you know, save at Mario's pad and double check all the stats and everything. I'll just go through and show you just to make sure that everything is the same. You can stop watching now if you don't want to see the rest of it. Now that you know how to do this. Like I said, now that once you have everything set up now, all this stuff, you know, installing the custom iOSs, downloading all these the programs that you need and everything, it's a bunch of work, but you only have to do it once. Once you've done it one time, you're ready for any future randomizer seeds. You can keep your unpacked WADs folder the way that I showed you there. Literally, all you have to do is compress a new randomized ROM in the same way that I showed you with GBA LZSS, and then replace it in that folder, and then repack everything again. Just do the repacking process again, and install that new WAD on your Wii, and you're good to go. So, yeah. That's pretty much it. And now you can enjoy Super Mario RPG Randomized, not the Super Mario RPG you're used to. And you can enjoy it in all its glory on the Wii VC, on your CRT. Hopefully, if with the SNES controller, if you've got the SNES to GameCube adapter. But there's a link to purchase this in the on the wiki page there, and I'll put one in the description of the video as well. It's from a company called RAFnet, which is a company based up here in Canada, in Quebec. They make a bunch of really cool controller adapters and stuff. They make like another really good one that's a SNES to USB one for your PC. And yeah, so I'll put a link there for you. Here we are in Mario's pad. So let's open up the menu. Here we go, status. Yeah, 20 HP, yep, 19 speed, 42 attack, 1 defense, 5 magic attack, 7 magic defense, 12 XP to the next level. That is exactly what we saw before. And special is Super Flame, 7 FP to cast, 30 magic power, and Mario learns a new technique at level 8. So this is indeed the same seed. This is exactly what we saw in, well, I mean, obviously it's exactly what we saw in RetroArch because it's the same ROM, but it matches up as well with the Japanese one. So, yeah. We're just going to run over here and save. Bowser on our file select screen there, and yeah. So yeah, that's how you do US WAD injection now. That's about it. So if you have any questions, feel free to pop into the Discord. There's a link to the Discord on the wiki as well. And yeah, come on out and join us for some randomizer races whenever we get together and do these. They don't happen too regularly, just because it. You know, playing through the randomizer usually takes a while, because it's, you know, it's kind of like playing the game through again for the first time, almost. It's almost like doing a casual playthrough again, just because everything gets all shuffled around and you don't quite know what to expect. Safety save a lot when you go through these, because you never know what you're going to run into. But yeah, that concludes this tutorial series. I hope everything is explained adequately, in as much detail as I could muster. And thanks for watching, guys. See you later.